The Christmas tree that couldn't shine. It was the one tree no one wanted until a child decorated it not with lights, but with love. On the outskirts of a town, where the neat paved roads gave way to a winding gravel lane, lay a small family-run tree farm. It was a place of deep, earthy scents, of sharp, clean pine, and of the cold, crisp air that promised the coming of a true winter. On the weekends leading up to Christmas, the farm was a place of joyful chaos. The sound of children's laughter echoed between the rows of proud green trees, and the crunch of car tires on gravel was a constant, happy rhythm. The trees themselves were a proud and hopeful community. There were the tall, majestic firs who held their heads high, their deep green needles shimmering in the low winter sun. There were the plump, cheerful spruces, their branches full and wide, practically begging to be adorned with lights and tinsel. They stood in neat, orderly rows, each one preened and perfect, waiting for their moment of glory, their chance to become the centerpiece of a family's Christmas. And then, at the very back of the farm, where the neat rows met the untamed edge of the wild forest, stood a little pine tree. His name, if a tree could be said to have a name, was Pip. He was not like the others. He was small for one, and his branches, instead of reaching proudly for the sky, seemed to have a mind of their own, growing in a slightly crooked, whimsical way. And on his left side, where a clumsy deer had scraped against him as a sapling, his branches were sparse, leaving a noticeable bare patch. Pip did his best. He tried to straighten his trunk, to puff out his needles, to look as grand and as festive as the other trees. But he knew in his sappy wooden heart that he was imperfect. Character's wish or struggle, the heart's winter. Pip's deepest wish was the same as every other tree on the farm, to be chosen. It was the purpose for which he had grown, the dream that had warmed him through the cold winters and nourished him through the long summer sun. He dreamed of a warm, cozy living room, of the happy, smiling faces of children looking up at him, of being draped in beautiful, sparkling lights and crowned with a brilliant, shining star. He wanted more than anything to be a Christmas tree. But as the days of December ticked by, a cold, quiet fear began to take root in him. He watched day after day as the proud firs and the cheerful spruces were chosen. He saw them wrapped carefully in netting and carried away by happy, laughing families, their branches waving a final triumphant goodbye, and he remained. He heard the whispers of the people as they passed him by. "Oh, that one's too small," a father would say. "It's a bit bare on that side, isn't it?" a mother would murmur. Each word was a small, sharp axe against his trunk, chipping away at his hopeful spirit. He watched as his brothers and sisters, once a dense, bustling forest, were thinned out, leaving him more and more exposed, his flaws more and more obvious. Now, on Christmas Eve, the farm was quiet. The last car had crunched its way down the gravel lane. The sun was beginning to set, painting the western sky in heartbreakingly beautiful shades of pink and orange. The farm was closing, and Pip was still there, a small, crooked, and forgotten tree, his dream of Christmas turning to a cold, hard knot of despair in his woody heart. He drooped his branches, a silent pine-scented tear of sap welling up on his bark. He was the tree that no one wanted, the tree that couldn't shine, the magical encounter, the spark of wonder. Just as the last of the sun's light bled from the sky, and a deep purple twilight settled over the silent farm. He heard it, the slow, hesitant crunch of footsteps on the frozen ground. A family was walking up the lane, a father, a mother, and a small girl with a bright red scarf and eyes that were wide with a gentle curiosity. They were late. They moved with the quiet, weary air of people for whom the festive season had been a struggle. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," the father said softly to the little girl. "I know it's not what we planned. We'll just see what's left." They walked through the now empty rows, past the stumps of the chosen, their hopes visibly sinking. And then the little girl saw him. She stopped, her head tilted, her gaze thoughtful. She did not see a small, crooked tree. She did not see the bare, flawed side. She saw a tree that was just the right size, a tree with a brave, determined spirit. "This one, Papa," she said, her voice a soft, certain whisper. "He's perfect." Her parents looked at each other, a silent, sad conversation passing between them. But the little girl, whose name was Lily, was already walking towards Pip, her small hand outstretched. She gently touched one of his lower branches. "He's just been waiting for us," she said. Pip felt the gentle touch of her mitten, and a warmth he had never felt before stirred deep within his roots. A single, perfect snowflake drifted down from the darkening sky and landed on the very tip of his highest branch, a small, cold, and beautiful kiss. The family paid the old farmer who gave them the tree for a pittance, and they carried Pip, not wrapped in a rough commercial net, but carefully, lovingly, in their arms. His journey had begun, but the true magic was yet to happen. The transformation, the gift within. They brought him into their small, humble, and deeply cozy home. It was not a grand house, but it was filled with a palpable, gentle warmth. He was placed in the corner of the living room, a place of great honor, right by the window. His bare side, which had been his great shame, was now nestled against the wall, perfectly hidden. From the front, he looked full and happy. He had found the perfect spot in the perfect home. The family brought out a single small box of decorations. There were no bright electric lights, no shiny store-bought baubles. Their decorations were humble, handmade, and full of a quiet, beautiful love. Lily came to him first. She had a long string of popcorn and bright red cranberries that she had strung herself. She began to drape it with a reverent, gentle care around his branches, and as the string of simple, edible jewels touched his needles, a strange and beautiful thing occurred. The cranberries began to glow, each one a tiny, perfect, and deeply red lantern, casting a warm, rosy light. Next, she brought out a handful of paper stars she had cut from old, yellowed sheets of music. She had painted each one with a touch of gold paint she had been given for her birthday. One by one, she hung them on his branches, and as each paper star settled among his needles, it too began to glow, not with a painted, reflected light, but with a soft, warm, and internal golden luminescence, as if each one held a tiny, captured piece of a real star. Finally, Lily reached into her pocket and took out her most precious treasure, a small, intricately carved wooden bird, a gift from her own grandfather. She gently placed it on a branch in the very center of the tree, where its small wooden eyes could look out over the room. And the little bird, warmed by the impossible gentle light of the paper stars and the cranberry lanterns, seemed to warm as well, its polished wood glowing as if it held a tiny, living, and contented heart. Pip was no longer a small, crooked pine tree. He was a beacon. He was a living constellation of gentle quiet and profoundly beautiful light. He was not lit with electricity, but with the pure, simple, and powerful magic of a child's love. He had never felt so tall, so proud, so full of a deep and joyful purpose. He was shining. The ending, the whisper of Christmas. Lily and her parents stood back, their faces illuminated by the warm, gentle, and magical glow. Their small, humble living room was transformed into a sanctuary of peace and wonder. They did not need a grand, expensive tree. They had a tree that was lit from within, a tree that was a miracle. Pip stood in his place of honor, his light a warm, steady, and joyful presence in the quiet, happy home. He could see his own reflection in the dark glass of the window, and for the first time he saw not his flaws, but his own unique and perfect beauty. He had been waiting his whole life not to be perfect, but to be loved. And in this small, quiet, and loving home, he had finally found his true purpose. He was not just a Christmas tree, he was their Christmas tree. The narrator reflects that we often spend our lives wishing we were taller or straighter or more perfect. We worry about our bare patches, the parts of us that we think are flawed and unlovable. But true beauty, true light, is not about being flawless. It is about finding the one place, the one heart, that sees us for who we truly are. For the most brilliant and beautiful light in the world comes not from a wire or a bulb, but from a simple, humble, and deeply loving heart that knows how to decorate a life, not with things, but with love. And that's how Christmas found its way into another heart.